And don't forget about that grace part. And don't forget about that truth part either. But we are to do both. Be brief. They don't want to spend 3 days reading your email. All right, be brief, be courteous, and ask them to contact you back. Because if you don't, you're really letting them off the hook. Say, I would like you to be for X or against Y. Contact me back with what you're going to be doing. And that makes the legislator more responsible to the people. I also want you to contact this fellow. He's the Speaker of the House, David Osborne. That is his email address. Be for or against X or Y. Usually a conservative fellow. We have a lot of issues. He's getting a lot of pressure on to go the other way. So he will need encouragement to say, brother, hold the line. Stay with the old past, the conservative Christian. So that is his email, phone number for everybody who's all the same. David.Osborne@lrc.ky.gov. If you need this, you can get it again to me later. The other guy is the President of the Senate. His name is Mr. Robert Stivers. His email address, robert.stivers@lrc.ky.gov. Contact your senator, your representative, and these two fellas, because they really have a lot of influence on what will happen in our state. All right, and we can get back to that afterwards if you need that. I can show you that after the presentation. Now, we're going to talk about the devil's in the details. This is old Snidely Whiplash. If you remember, some people my age, well, Debbie do right. Oh, and there's Representative Bentley, and we got Representative Minter. We got lots of them. You guys, give us your name. Tell us what district you're from.
Dan Fraser. I represent a portion of Madison County.
My name is Dan Bentley, and Green County is 4 precincts to Boyd, home of Brady.
All right, thank you, Brother Danny. Glad you made it here today. So those people need some encouragement. The devil's in the details. And here, I want to give you bill numbers. Don't get too hooked up, stuck on bill numbers. And here's the reason why. Because sometimes you'll get contacted about a certain bill. This is a bad bill. I got lots of calls on this bill number. And so they're like, okay, I didn't vote for that. Then somebody else writes another bill that basically is the same thing and just has a different number on it. So when you contact your legislator, it's better to not say the bill number in particular, but say, this is the issue I'm talking about. And that way, no matter what bill is written about it, you've contacted them, your feelings on that issue. So I'll give you the bill numbers to be specific, but don't worry about the details so much. The issue is what's most important. So let's talk about some good bills that need some help. These are some pro-life bills. Senate Bill number 9 is called the Born Alive Bill. You might remember that the governor over in our neighboring state of Virginia, he said famously here 2-3 months ago that if a baby, they attempt to abort it, but it's born alive anyway, the baby will be kept comfortable, and then a discussion will be taking place on whether they'll kill it or let it live. That is out and out murder. It's sitting on the table. This bill would require doctors that if they've attempted to kill a baby, but it's alive anyway, it's been born, they are required to give it medical care and attention. This is just basic humanity. Unfortunately, it's something we need to put into the law. The Born Alive Bill, a wonderful bill that I encourage you to contact your people to get them to pass. That's what SB stands for, Senate Bill, HB, House Bill. Senate Bill 90, let's go back to 9. You'll notice it says it's passed the Senate. So the Senate has approved this, and now it's sitting in the House of Representatives. So your senator's already done it. You just need to call your representative. This next one, Senate Bill 90, is in the Senate right now. It's the Right of Conscience Act. This would be for other medical professions, doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, anybody that might be connected medically. They are not required in any way to help, to counsel, to perform, or in any way work toward an abortion. And it would give them the legal protection to not be involved in things like that. If you guys would like to get more seats, as just like in church, there's more in the front. Feel free. And if you want to hit one of the other rooms, I'll do the same thing the rest of the day in the other 3 sessions. So that's the Right of Conscience Act to protect medical professionals who don't want to do that. House Bill number 67. This is in the House. I haven't voted on it. There's been some courts that have said, listen, we think abortion is implied as a right in our state constitution, and because it's implied, they're going to rule in favor of abortion. Well, just to cut that out, we're going to say that there is no right to abortion listed or implied in the Kentucky Constitution. So no judge, no liberal judge could use that as an excuse. That's a very good bill to stop a little bit of judicial way of moving around the will of the legislature. Then there's House Bill number 142. This says we are not going to use any state money to give to people who perform abortions or assist in abortions or counsel people to go get them. No state money. whatsoever go to those organizations. And I personally am very sick that part of my federal tax money goes to Planned Parenthood. And it's a private organization. Why are we giving a private organization public funds? And then they turn around and give millions of that to the liberal abortion crowd to lobby. If they have millions of extra dollars to give away, they must not need my money. So anyway, we were down to one abortion clinic in Kentucky, but under Governor Beshear, I think now we're back up to 3. People in this last election, a lot of them voted for personality over policy. And now we have blood on our hands because they did that. Let's erase this blood from our hands by being active on these bills. Right? So these are some good, positive, pro-life bills. The issues, again, more important than some specific bill numbers. Now let's talk about education again, because we combine the day with Christian's Day and Homeschool Day. So we have lots of educational issues, both good and bad. Senate Bill number 8. This is one that has already been passed by the legislature. I'm just letting you know it's on the governor's desk. And it would say that in every school there's somebody called a resource officer. And this says every single one of them is going to be armed and they must be trained. I think that's going to really increase safety in Kentucky schools. If you went to one school and it said no weapons allowed, and you went to another school and it said somebody here is packing and they're trained, where are you going to go do a shooting at? But now every Kentucky school, every public school is going to have somebody packing and trained. Praise the Lord for that. They wanted to talk about putting prayer back into the schools. So the way they're going to have to do that is through a moment of silence. Senate Bill 143 would say there will be a minimum of 1 minute, no more than 2 minutes. At the beginning of the school day, in every Kentucky public school, they have a moment of silence. I think that would be good, of course, for the Christian students to pray, and even for the non-Christian students just to have a minute of peace, get their thoughts together. I think it's a very good, positive step. It's not exactly prayer in school, but it sets aside time where the Christian kids can do it. So I think it's a good, positive bill. Senate Bill 147 is both good and bad. This is a bill that really has the homeschool community split right down the middle. This is called the Tim Tebow bill. Tim Tebow being the famous football player who was a homeschooler. And this would say that homeschool students are allowed to participate in the extracurricular activities of their public schools in their county. I pay taxes for it, therefore I should be allowed to participate in it. Half the homeschool community wants this. The other half doesn't want this for the following reason. The more the state I get to be involved, the more the state is going to want to have control on what I am doing. And I took my kid out of the public school system, one, to remove this influence, and I don't want them to have an excuse for more control. I don't want them to have an avenue for more influence. So the homeschool community is very split on this. You talk to the executive director from Czech. Czech's official position is you need to be active on this because the community is split. So we're not going to speak in one voice for or against it. I encourage you, you make your voice known because when the vote comes down every year, it's always very close. Hasn't passed yet, and it'll be close again this time. So whatever your opinion is on that, let your voice be heard. House Bill 22 says you couldn't do any spankings in school. If you don't think the kids still need spankings, just go into a checkout line at Walmart. I guarantee you, you're going to think that kid needs a spanking. Less control in the schools would be a bad bill. It's already passed the House, and so it's now going over to the Kentucky State Senate. House Bill number 296 specifically says comprehensive sex education in all grades. Kindergarten, first grade, comprehensive sex education. What do you think they're going to be pushing? Just because you were born a boy, you might not actually be a boy. And we've got schools nowadays that say he can give you an abortion and you don't even have to tell your parents. You're not a step away from them doing that transitioning thing either. This is a horrible, terrible, awful bill, a step in the wrong direction. Lord save us from such wickedness. This is House Bill number 296. Comprehensive sex education mandatory for all Kentucky public school students. Then House Bill number 87. I don't like this one. If you are going to graduate high school in Kentucky, you are required to fill out the federal student loan application before you're allowed to graduate from high school in Kentucky. Here, this is how you can get into that. Now, I think if you want to choose to do this, go for it. But I don't think you should require high school students to do this. If they're going to require something, they ought to require that they do things like they've done before. Take a financial literacy course. Make sure you can pass the citizenship test. Make sure you can give change. Say amen right there. Because I know McDonald's, if a kid can't get change without pointing the machine. So I don't like that one. Don't like it. Don't need it. Couldn't use it. So that's some of the education bills, good, the bad, and the ugly. Gambling. This is probably the single biggest issue. The Republican caucus would be the one to stop it. It is my impression. I've talked to some legislators. The caucus is very split on this issue. All right, they are very split on this issue. So it will be very close. They are getting a lot of pressure from those who want to say, hey, we're going to gamble our way to prosperity. And the only way the state makes money in this is if the people lose. So when you have the people's interest in direct opposition to the state's interest, that is better. So here's some of the different ways of gambling. Sports wagering, Senate Bill 24 that was in the Senate. Senate Bill 145 would have a lot more regulations on gambling we already have, and it's also setting up for expanded gambling because, hey, we already have all the regulations in place. House Bill 7 and 181 would make casinos legal in Kentucky. House Bill 137 would, again, tax it. All right, horrible ideas. All these, again, devil's in the details. I'm not caught up in particular numbers of bills, this expansion of gambling in Kentucky, and they like to rephrase it. That's a typical tactic of the liberals. They like to rephrase things. They say, well, instead of the right to bear arms, you have a need to bear arms. Don't let them switch the word right for the word need. It's my right. Don't let them switch what it really is, which is gambling. They'll switch it for the word game. Instead of murder, they'll call it abortion. All right. Instead of a baby, they'll call it a fetus. Try to make it more palatable. Call it what it is. It's gambling. Expanded gaming. Bad for Kentucky. And if you want to influence those who are split, we need to let our voice be heard. Great, be courteous, has to be called back. Expanded gaming, gambling in Kentucky. I want to give you a verse on Jeremiah 17:11. What's the Bible say? As the partridge sitteth on eggs and hatcheth them not, so is he that getteth riches and not by right, shall leave them in the midst of his days, and in his end shall be a fool. You can get money through ways that you should not. You're not going to be holding on to that. It's going to disappear and die away like a bird. And we might get money from gambling, but we're going to have to pay extra for all of these problems with addiction and all these other problems that's going to come with it. If you go to Las Vegas, they don't just have gambling. It brings in a whole lot of other problems. And we're actually going to probably lose money, and it's going to wreck a lot of lives. Last thing we need is bring in more witnesses. So that is the biblical principle on this gambling issue. Marijuana. We're going to smoke our way to prosperity. All right? We're going to gamble our way. We're going to drink our way more bourbon in the state, and we're going to smoke our way. Senate Bill 105 and House Bill 148 would have recreational use. This is in the House and the Senate, where if you just want, like over in California, you want to stand on the street corner in California and smoke a joint, you can. You cannot stand on the street corner in California and drink a Coca-Cola with a straw, because that would be wrong. But you can smoke a joint. That's the mentality we're dealing with. Now, Senate Bill 107 and House Bill 136 is for medical use. And a lot of people are like, I'd be for medical use, but I wouldn't be for recreation. In California, again, the state has recreation. The largest percentage of people with marijuana use cards are people the ages 18 to 24. I wonder how many of them have glaucoma. Right. The single biggest reason that people get medical marijuana use cards is for stress and insomnia. Because, hey, you smoke a joint, you will feel less stressed. That is true. How many of you all have been stressed? How many has had a night of insomnia? Then you can go to the doctor, he can say, well, they did have this, they were stressed, therefore I gave this. So you know what? Medical is recreational. There is no difference between the two. Because I can go to the doctor and say, I'm stressed, and they give me a thing for it. Medical is recreational. Let's give you a little facts on this real quick. Hey, one of the crowd, they say it's not addictive. Well, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, they're a liar. It is addictive. Research shows 1 in 10 marijuana users will become addicted. For people using before the age of 18, that number rises to 1 in 6. This is a direct quote from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and the information inside is on the bottom. So if you get anybody who says it's not addictive, they are either mistaken or they are a liar. Don't call them a liar, they just might be mistaken. It is addictive. 1 in 10, and if you're under 18, 1 in 6. I had a guy, in fact, I think it was in this very room. I said in the back there. He's like, Brother Lee, I smoked it for 20 years. It's not addictive. That's what I'm dealing with. All right? Lord help. And it's dangerous to those who do not use it. They're like, well, I'm not going to use it. It's also a danger to you. Notice what we have here. It says, after alcohol, marijuana is the drug most often found in the blood of drivers involved in crashes. It's going to decrease your safety on the roads, even if you never take it yourself. Building on that, this is the monthly report from the American Automobile Association, the AAA. Direct quote: fatal road crashes involving marijuana double after Washington state legalizes drugs. Double fatal road crashes. Lord help us, our safety. And then I like this one here. In Washington state, the percentage of drivers involved in fatal crashes who used marijuana went from 8% to 17% in the year that they made it medically legal. This is from the University of Colorado School of Medicine. It says, quote, the proportion of marijuana-positive drivers involved in fatal motor vehicle crashes in Colorado has increased dramatically since the commercialization of medical marijuana before they went recreational. Question after session. That's the medical one. Decreases safety on the road, and that's for people who never did. By the way, people keep saying, well, there is some good in the plant, and there is. And they're like, I wish I could get the good out without the bad. You can. The crowd pushing marijuana doesn't want you to know about this. You can use it legally in every state because the FDA has approved. I have here just 3. I think there's more than a dozen drugs that have already been approved nationally that use the good part of the marijuana plant, but it doesn't come with the part that makes you high. And they don't want you to know that that already exists. And you can take this and get the benefit without the detriment. They want to act like that doesn't happen, and we don't have the stuff which includes the part that makes me high. So that's just my 2 cents on it. This is every single state that has recreational and medical. You notice they all had medical first, and then they had recreational. Why is that? Well, as we discussed, medical is recreational. So they're like, well, we already have it. We might as well make money on it through taxes of recreation. We won't tax the medical, but when they go recreational, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Everyone with recreational had medical first, without exception. And then for people saying it's good for PTSD, the American Psychiatric Association says there is no scientific evidence that marijuana is in any way beneficial for the treatment of any psychiatric disorder. In contrast, evidence supports a strong association of cannabis use with the onset of psychiatric disorders. I am a combat veteran. I've been in combat, seen people blow apart. Some of my friends came back and they couldn't handle it, and they have PTSD. I praise the Lord to God. And if I give one of my buddies, I can name Sergeant Will was his name. And if I'm like, Sergeant Will, you got some problems dealing with this here. Smoke this, and for the next 3 hours, you're not going to have to think about it. At the end of those 3 hours, does he have every problem he had 3 hours prior? Except for those 3 hours, he's worth nothing. And 1 in 10 of those guys are going to become addicted to it, in addition to a bunch of other medical problems that it causes. And gun issues have been real big lately. Did you know, under federal law, a marijuana user cannot legally possess a firearm? That is U.S. Code Title 18, Part 1, Chapter 24, Section 922. An illegal possession of a firearm is a felony. And I bet the crowd pushing this gig out and say, this is the way that the liberals are able to go into conservative states and take away tens of thousands of guns from people who thought that nothing's going to happen. It is illegal to possess a firearm. That is the law that's already been to court. The Ninth Circuit Court heard this in 2016. The Supreme Court refused to hear the appeal, which means that is the law of the land. You cannot own a firearm if you use marijuana. The sodomite agenda. This is the biblical term for the homosexual movement. Senate Bill 85, and that is where it was made it illegal in Kentucky for a minor to receive any counseling saying that they should not move their gender from one to the other. Not only can you not say that they can do this, you shouldn't say that changing this is even possible. It would be illegal to say this. And this is one step away from telling the preacher, for a long time, not allowed to preach about that. It's a step towards that direction. Very bad step. It's very unbiblical. The Bible says God made them male and female. And that's what he said. It doesn't matter if they like it. It is what it says. Senate Bill 114, this is a good bill. It's called the Save Women's Sports Act. Right now we have some men who, if you want to be very plain, are lying, saying they're a woman, and they're competing in the women's events. And if you've been noticing this across the country, they're winning all the championships in the women's events. The whole reason we had women's events is because men, as a general rule, have more muscle mass than women. And they're winning all these competitions. This would say, if you want to compete in women's events, you have to be a woman. Crazy idea. But that's the bill. So it'd be a very good bill to help protect and to say, I think, where's all the women's rights movement? You think they'd really be for this? All right, that's a good bill. Senate Bill 1144. Let's see, Senate Bills 130, House Bill 225 would say, listen, if somebody identifies as the other gender, they are homosexual, you cannot refuse to hire them. You cannot fire them for this reason. You cannot do anything against them whatsoever. You have to do business with them. We've already seen things in Kentucky that it affects bakers, photographers, t-shirt makers. They want to come to your religion school. If they want to work in your church, you can't say, I'm not going to hire you for these reasons. Bad bill against religious liberty. Senate Bill 151 would say, if you have committed a hate crime because of their sexual orientation or gender, you get extra prison time for doing that. Why are they singling that? Hate crime stifle freedom of speech. That's the way they phrase it. Gun rights. House Bill 31 would say you can't carry a gun unless you buy a permit from the state. The Second Amendment gives me the right, but they want you to have to pay for that. Bad bill. House Bills 45 and 192 would say you can't sell a gun to your neighbor. You have to go through all this paperwork, get it approved. We got to know who's got what. No large capacity magazines. And Senate Bills 32 and 259 would make it a crime if a minor is able to get to one of the guns in your house and to use it. My daughter is 17. Her birthday's next week, by the way, if you don't remember. She's walking around. And she's 17. If she is unable to get to the gun, I am unable to get to the gun. This is a horrible bill. Don't get me wrong. I think you ought to make sure to have some safety and not have little kids on it. That's just good common sense. But if I can't get to the gun quickly, at least when somebody breaks in, because I had to do all these things, it's not going to do me any good. All right, so bad bills taking away our Second Amendment rights. Election. Senate Bill 2 would say you have to have an ID to prove that you're a citizen in order to vote. That's some good common sense. Say amen right there. Senate Bill 49 would lower the requirements for wet dry votes. We have several counties that are still dry, and they're like, well, we're going to lower the requirements where you only need 500 people in order to get this done. They just want to change the rules. Bad bill. House Bill 80 would allow you to register to vote on election day. Well, I can see this being very misused to skew elections. Horrible idea that would decrease our voting election integrity. House Bill 101 removed the voting age from 18 down to 16. You know why? 16, you're still indoctrinated with all the socialist ideas over in the public schools. So as long as you're doing that, hey, why don't we just let you go ahead and vote? Not a good idea. In fact, you want to be honest about it. If you want to do things biblically, it needs to be moved up to about the age 20. And I give you biblical principles on that as we go on. But these are some good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, miscellaneous bills. No sanctuary cities in Kentucky. And if you try to do that, it'd be illegal. I already talked about Senate Bill 2. $15 per hour. They want to say the minimum wage should be $15 per hour. If I can drop out of school and flip burgers and get $15 per hour, what is the plumber going to cost me? That actually has training. Right? This is one of the socialist agendas, and socialism has destroyed every nation where it took control. Helmets for kids 12 and under. This would make it a law that if you're riding a bicycle, you must wear a helmet if you're 12 years old or under. And it holds fines up to $1,000. This was brought up a few years ago, and because one person who was a police officer happened to be up from a guy's district named Senator Higgins, and he's like, listen, if this passes, if I'm a police officer, and I see some kid who's 11 years old wearing no helmet, I'm required to pull him over. I have to give his parent or legal guardian a ticket, and I cannot release him just to let him go and ride his bike. I can only release him to the custody of his parent or legal guardian. And if I see someone across the street, this is a story the guy told me. If I see someone across the street being beat to death, I'm not legally allowed to leave the minor to go help the person. I have more important things to do than worry about bicycle accidents. But yet this would make it a law. The nanny state. Bad bill. Senate Bill 78. House Bill 66. I put this one in yellow because this is not morally bad, not morally good. It's just something that bothers me. So I just put it in yellow. It would say you're not allowed to use a phone if you're driving. Not even just not texting. That's already illegal. You just couldn't talk on your phone. Even if you have one of those wireless phones in your car, handless phones, you're not allowed to use that one either. It'd be illegal. They give you a ticket. I didn't like that, but it's not a moral issue, so I just kind of put that one in the deal. But I sure hope they did. That's the way. Again, how to email your legislator, first name, not last name. That's bills before the Kentucky legislature, and I am only 20 seconds over time. Okay, so hope that's been informative for you. Write, call, email, go upstairs, leave a message for them. Be brief, be courteous, ask them to contact you back. Enjoy one of the other sessions, and thank you for coming to Christians in the Capitol.
My name is David Gibbs with the Christian Law Association. I have the privilege of being the president of it, and people always ask me, how'd you get to be the president of the Christian Law Association? Well, when I founded it 50 years ago, nobody else was there. So I got to have any title I wanted, and that's the one I've had for 50 years. We are legal missionaries. You're not familiar with our ministry. We defend Christians when they're sued or challenged for the faith, and we do it as a ministry. We never make a charge for what we're doing. You say somehow those lawyers are charged. I don't blame you for thinking that, but it's not true. We do it as a ministry. We have now litigated in all 50 states. There's never a time we don't have cases in all 50 states. And last year, in excess of 120,000 requests for help came in. We have the privilege of responding. With me is my son, Jonathan. He's a lawyer with our ministry, and attorney Seth Krause over here. He's a lawyer with our ministry. We want to start with the word of prayer, and then we're going to delve into the notes. Father, thank you for your grace. Pray there's a wonderful testimony in front of all these legislators and government workers as God's people. Come and meet with them and greet with them.
God, I pray when we leave here, we'll have made the Lord Jesus look good. Thank you for this moment. Now help us as we go to these serious issues in Jesus' name. Amen. We have 30 minutes, and I want to tell you, it's a little bit like taking a sip from a fire hose, okay? If we could, we would take any one of these issues and do hours on it because they'd be worth hours to explain it more.
But we want to give you the tip of the iceberg on a few issues. We can't get into it in detail because of the time constraints, but these are things especially that you should know about and that you can pray for. Jonathan, what's the first case that we have there in there? And does anybody lack notes? We want everybody to have notes. You need notes? Okay, what's the first case?
The first case is the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates. Basically, this is a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court challenging a law in California. I'm not going to get into all the details of the case because, again, for time's sake, but at the end of the day, we basically have competing interests in society. And the question it ultimately boils down to is, what can the government require you to communicate and say? And in this case, it had to do with a group that provided ultrasounds and such and information and counseling. And they were trying to say, you have to say, and then the language, we're not an abortion provider, you can find an abortion provider, so on and so forth. Obviously, for many people, this was very unsettling because they say, why does the government have the right to come into us as private citizens, as a group, and tell us you have to say X?